Direct from Montreal, Canada, this is Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Joining me on the phone from great American band Grand Funk Railroad, it is drummer Don Brewer. And of course, we are here to talk about their new album. Or maybe not. Their last new album was in 1983, and as Don has clearly said, there is no need for the band to make new music because it is all about touring. And of course, when you think touring band, and they do have former Kiss guitarist Bruce Kulick in the band. It's been well over a decade, actually, almost 15 years, I guess, at this point. Anyway, I think as a fan, it probably would be nice to see Bruce Kulick lend his guitar skills to some new Grand Funk Railroad music. But of course, when you go out to a Grand Funk show, you want to hear We're an American Band and some of the other songs, and hearing the words, and now from our new album, well, you probably would head over to the concessions and get another rack of ribs or whatever you're in the mood for. Anyway, let's not go on too much, but all I can say is when you think great American bands, you do, of course, think Kiss and Grand Funk Railroad, and to have a member of Kiss in Grand Funk Railroad, well, that is just pure Nirvana. Oh, yeah, that band. Ugh. Anyway, without further ado, here is the one, the only, drummer extraordinaire, le seul et unique, Don Brewer. We are speaking with Grand Funk Railroad's Don Brewer. The band heads out on their 2020 some kind of wonderful tour. As we say in Montreal, Don, bonjour. Pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks, Mitch. It's great to talk to you. And we're really looking forward to kicking this tour off in Lincoln, Rhode Island in February here. And we got another great year planned. We've been doing this with the guys that we were just talking about, Bruce Kulick and Max Carl and myself and Mel Shocker. And here we go again.
Yeah, so talk to me about what sort of keeps the band motivated. There hasn't been an album since the 80s in terms of studio recording. What sort of keeps the band fresh and the touring prospects fresh? Is it just the fact that you've got these new musicians that have come in over the years? Or is the music just so great that the fans smile on their faces, just enough motivation to say, yeah, we're going to do this?
Well, yeah, I mean, playing live is what we've always been about, and it still is what we're always about, and we get to work in some new stuff into the show when we want to. Over the past 20 years, I can't believe that this particular incarnation of Grand Funk has been touring now for 20 years, but that's a fact, and we keep it going because it's a fun show, and we break it up and we put in a few new things here and there, but we focus on doing the hits, which is American Band and I'm Your Captain, Closer to Home, and Some Kind of Wonderful, and of course, it's just always a treat to watch people in the audience react to those songs, and it's great.
When I first saw you at the Ottawa's Blue Fest about 10, 12 years ago, brought out my daughter, we had a nice time with Bruce Kulick because I know Bruce, and I didn't realize as a Canadian guy how many great songs you had. Talk to me about the importance of having a great song and how it's been able to sort of sustain and propel you through 51 years of career.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we came up, in the era of FM underground radio, and we were allowed as artists back then, coming out of the late 60s, early 70s, you could create music and you didn't have to, put it in a little cube, and say, oh, it's got to be this way, it's got to be that way. So you could create a lot of great music and you knew that it would get played on some radio station someplace, because as long as it was good, it didn't necessarily have to meet some sort of criteria. That came later in 72, when all of the FM stations, turned more commercial, and of course we followed that trend as well, with American Band and Locomotion and Some Kind of Wonderful. But I think the reason that it was not only us creating great music in the early 70s, but in a lot of other bands, the music is still around today because of that freedom that we had to create the great music, and it was all about feel, and it wasn't about click tracks and about perfect recordings, it was about a great song and a great performance.
Okay, so let me ask you about click tracks and playing to tape. A lot of bands these days do play to backing tracks, and in fact, I know a couple of bands where they even pump in crowd swell. Is that something that you've right? I mean, isn't that terrific to hear some crowd swell? Oh, yeah, I know. I was telling this story to Frank Marino the other day. I was over at his house, and he was just like, "Mitch, you're fucking kidding me. They're not actually pumping in crowd swell." I went, "Yeah, Frank, they are." He goes, "Ugh, the things have changed." But talk to me about that. Is that something Grand Funk does? And if so, is it something that enhances a show? Is it cheating? How do you sort of take the whole, tapes thing?
Yeah, I think it's gone a bit far with some of the bands, and I won't mention any names, but we play with a lot of different bands at a lot of the festivals and stuff, and you see them carrying all of this, recording equipment, that's backstage, and you can tell that they're playing along to the tracks. I'm not crazy about that. We play live. We do, have, some enhancement with some of the background vocal stuff, but it's not recorded, It's just better. I'm still singing. Tim's still singing. Max is still singing. Bruce even sings along. And we're singing the harmonies, and they're there. And so, playing along to tracks and stuff. I don't personally think that's what people come to see a live show for, is to hear the recording. Is that they come to a live show to hear a live show, and that's what we do, and that's what we focus on.
Well, to be honest, I come sometimes for the mistakes or for the different version, so to hear
Sure.
American band done and whoops, Bruce missed a note. You go, okay, it's live. Thank God. Not that Bruce misses notes. Bruce never misses anything.
Yeah, Bruce missed a note. Uh-oh.
No, Bruce is perfect. He's like a machine on guitar. Let me talk to you about Detroit and Michigan in the late 60s, early 70s. You have Amboy Dukes, Ted Nugent, which is part of Amboy Dukes, Mitch Ryder, MC5,
Yep.
Alice Cooper, Grand Funk. There was a time where Detroit was sort of the center of the rock and roll universe. Talk to me a little bit about that time, but also making your mark, because when you have Mitch Ryder, when you have Amboy Dukes, when you have Alice Cooper, you have competition. So talk to me a little bit about that scene and rising above and being noticed and still being here all these years later.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just doing another interview, and somebody, a guy brought up that whole thing, about what was the music scene like in the Detroit area, and I told him, the same story I'm going to tell you. We were kind of outside of it. We were the band from Flint, and all of these bands, from Detroit, Ann Arbor, they had the kind of a clique thing going, and they were competing with each other, and they were doing this, and we were this band from Flint, and we played all over the rest of the state. We didn't play around Detroit that much, and all of these guys, kind of looked at us like, kind of the outsiders, and now I'm talking about when we were the Pack, and we changed our name to Grand Funk Railroad in 1969. Went and got a lucky break, to play the first Atlanta Pop Festival, and went down there, and all of a sudden took off, playing through the South, Texas and Louisiana and Georgia and all these places, and took off, signed a record contract, put out a record. All of a sudden, we're like a pretty big hit, with On Time and Grand Funk, and all of a sudden, all of these bands in Michigan go, oh yeah, they're a Michigan band, they're one of us, oh really, that's not the story we heard before, we were kind of, pushed aside, so it was funny, we were totally on the outside of all that stuff, and it's fine, it came around well.
Yeah, it came around actually very great. It came around terrifically, I have to say.
Yeah.
Just since you mentioned Flint, I want to ask you this, and it has nothing to do with rock and roll, but of course, Michael Moore made a movie, Roger and Me, years ago about the whole Flint situation. How did you sort of react to that, and seeing Flint sort of go from this great corporate crown and sort of go into these rough times and fall apart. Was that something that you sort of stayed on top of, or once the band moved out and moved on, you just sort of went, whatever? How do you sort of look at Flint in terms of a city over the last few years?
Yeah, I think it's very tragic what happened in Flint, especially with the water. But before the water situation that happened a few years ago, all the factories and stuff, all the GM and Fisher Body and that whole thing, AC Sparkplug and all, they were the ones that were supporting Flint, and all of the people that lived there, and all these families, and all of a sudden they started shipping the jobs to Mexico and shipping them out to non-union places, and they were trying to bust the unions, and it had a tragic effect on Flint. It put a lot of people into poverty, and a lot of homes, just were abandoned and left, and I've known people that, I still know people that live there. My family, my sister lived up there for years, and my nephew still lives there. So, you see this stuff, and, we get through there every now and then. It still is amazing to me that Flint has survived. The leaving of General Motors. They pretty much moved out of there now, and but Flint has survived. But it's tough. It's been a tough transition for that town.
It's been an incredibly tough transition. And speaking of Flint, in somewhere in the late 70s, you had a band called Flint. You made an album called Flint.
Flint, yeah.
Yeah, talk to me about that. It appeared, 5-6 years into Grand Funk that the band breaks up, and you're like, okay, I'm out of here. I'm going to go start something new. Talk to me about sort of the challenges of starting something new and then saying, ooh, okay, this is not working. Let's go back to the brand, because Grand Funk is a brand, and let's resurrect that back somewhere around early 80, 81. Talk to me about trying to start off a new project away from Grand Funk.
It was challenging. We didn't intend to. Mel and I put together the band Flint with Craig Frost. Craig was the keyboard player for a few years in Grand Funk, and we put together this band. Kind of like, because we were looking for something to do, so we went over to Mel's house and started jamming, and then all of a sudden we started writing these songs and going, oh man, that's not bad. Oh, how about that? That's not bad. And so we just kind of put a tape together and shopped it around, and all of a sudden CBS was interested in it, Sony, and it was like, oh my God, they want us to go on the road, and it was like, oh really? So we didn't even have a name for the band at the time, so it was like kind of like threw this band together and went on the road, and we told the agents, we don't want people to expect to see Grand Funk. So don't tell people that this is like former members of Grand Funk. We're just going to go out as the band Flint. Well, nobody knew who Flint was, and so it was very difficult to go out and play some clubs and stuff. And nobody knew who we were, which is what we wanted. We wanted to make it on our own. That kind of a thing. So yeah, it just it kind of fizzled out pretty quick, and we didn't go back to the band Grand Funk until somebody started knocking on our door, going, hey, bands are getting back together. This is the early '80s, and you guys should go back out on the road. We put together Grand Funk again, and then Mel decided he didn't want to go out again, so we had to get a different bass player, and that didn't work as well either. Once we went out, we did a couple of years, with Dennis Bellinger on bass, and Mark Farner and myself, and it just kind of, I think it was too early for Grand Funk to be resurrected in the early '80s. It was just too early of a time, and so that didn't work either.
Yeah, the reunion tour needed a little more seasoning. All right, so let me ask you quickly about Max, Carl, and Bruce. Let me bring it back to 2020.
Sure.
You pick up Bruce, of course, from coming out of Kiss. Kiss goes on a reunion tour and a farewell tour, and they've got Peter Criss and Ace Frehley back. And Bruce is, whoops, okay, I need a gig. And you get Bruce. Talk to me about you making the decision to bring him in, because he is a very precise, hard rock, heavy metal guitarist, which is sort of outside of what Grand Funk does. was that a chance you took? Was it, hey, he was in Kiss, this is going to be good for the bottom line? So talk to me a little bit about the decision, and then, of course, how he's fit in for 20 years.
Well, it's I don't know if you're familiar with all the other stuff that Bruce has done in his career. I mean,
of course,
he
Meatloaf.
He played with, he actually, we looked at videos of Bruce playing in a disco band. Bruce is a very capable guitar player. He doesn't just play, the heavy metal stuff, the hard rock stuff. He plays, he plays basically anything he wants to. And that's, that was the reason that I met Bruce first when I was playing in Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band in the 80s. And Bruce was playing with Michael Bolton. And Michael Bolton was the opening act on that Bob Seger tour, and that's where I first met Bruce. And that's where we developed a friendship, and so when this particular situation came up where Mel and I were looking to put together a new rendition of Grand Funk, I looked up Bruce on the internet to see what he was doing, and he had just finished up with a band called Union, and so it kind of looked to me like he was kind of in between. It wasn't like doing anything particular, and I contacted him then to see if he was interested in working on a new rendition, a new tale of Grand Funk Railroad, and of course he was, and that's when we flew him up to Traverse City, and we got with Max Carl. Formerly a 38 Special, to sing some lead stuff with us, and we put together this new band, and of course the new band is Grand Funk Railroad. There you go.
Yeah, and it sounds great. Listen, yeah. I've seen a couple of shows, and it's a great time. I know fans love to complain and go, "Oh, original members." It's like, you know what? You go there for the spirit. You go there for the songs. Stop with the other stuff.
Yeah. And let's be real. How many bands have the original members today?
Well, not many. And in fact, no, but not many.
I can't think of any. I can't think of any. I can't think of it. And as a matter of fact, I know bands that have nobody left. From the original band. So, i.e., Foreigner.
Foreigner from time to time.
Guess Who,
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, yeah, Foreigner, Guess Who. Quiet Riot doesn't have any original members. Yeah. They have members from the classic lineup, but not originals. And I think that stuff is somewhat overrated. And so it's going to get me to this other question down the line here. But let me just quickly ask you about Max Carl. I'll take a detour there. He, of course, like Bruce, comes from something that is not sort of in the Grand Funk style, 38 Special, more Southern rock, more, I don't want to say hillbilly because that's rude, but, it's more Southern rock. Talk to me about getting that voice in, because the voice of a band is very, very identifiable. You think Aerosmith, right away, Steven Tyler. You think Guns N' Roses, right away, Axl Rose. Talk to me about getting that different sort of timbre into the band, and what does Max bring to it? Because the show I saw, again, effing spectacular.
Yeah, Max is, Max is more than just Max was actually a replacement guy for 38 Special. He replaced Don Barnes when Don Barnes left the band, so they brought Max in to do the 38 Special. And of course they had one of the biggest hits they ever had, Second Chance, which is, that's Max singing that. But Max was from a band called Jack Mack and the Heart Attack. And, probably one of the greatest, soul bands out there ever, from the 80s, and when I was looking for a singer for Grand Funk, Max's name came up, through a friend of mine that worked for PB Drums. PB used to make drums, and I knew this guy, and he introduced me to Max, and I started listening to Max's stuff, Big Dance and Jack Mack and the Heart Attack and all this stuff, and I went, Max is, probably one of the last blue-eyed soul singers on the planet, and that's perfect for Grand Funk, because I know a lot of people thought, the Grand Funk was this heavy, hard rock band, and we did do a lot of that. But if you listen to the vocals and listen to the material and all that stuff, we're basically an R&B band that's pumped up on steroids, and that's what we need for a singer is an R&B guy. And Max is just a perfect fit for that. He really is.
Yeah, he delivers the goods. So, all right, let me ask you. You've been the one constant member of the band over these 50 plus years, and we did mention Foreigner. And the first 3 times I saw Foreigner, there was no Mick Jones. I saw the band with all the replacements, and I have to say, it was great. The song sounded great. It was a fun night. So
yeah.
Do you see yourself at some point moving to that? I mean, does Grand Funk Railroad end in 5 years, or does Grand Funk Railroad go on for another 55 years, and it's just other people carrying on the band?
Another 55 years with different, I have no idea. I mean, we haven't really planned for that contingency to happen. So I don't know. I really don't know what that's going to be. I can't. Personally, I can't foresee a Grand Funk Railroad out there with no original members. But, certainly in this day and age, anything is possible, isn't it?
It's very possible. And listen, as you get older, and of course it's not to be disrespectful, but, doing this at 76, 77, 78 could be very difficult. Do you at some point say to Bruce and Max and Tim, hey guys, listen, carry on and do sort of like Mick Jones, show up once every 5 shows, show up. Or is it really, if there's no Don, there's no band, end of story, move on to the next question?
Yeah, geez, I have no idea. That's certainly something for our next corporate meeting,
Can just see that. I was talking to this guy Mitch, and he said that we should put this on our agenda today. Let's have this discussion.
Yeah. We're gonna have to run that one by the attorneys.
Well, listen. Obviously, with Foreigner and other bands doing it, it is very doable and very possible. But there is that if your Don's not there. Before we wrap up, let me just quickly ask you about this the live album. Brilliantly titled the live album.
Which one? There's two of them.
The first one.
And there was the first one.
Yeah, the original one, the first one. Talk to me about the importance of that, because you look at MC5, you look at that, you look at Kiss Alive. There were a lot of bands where fans just sort of didn't understand what was going on with the studio albums, and then they put out live albums, and all of a sudden it's like epiphany.
I get it.
Right?
Yeah. We were never, especially the first couple of albums, it was always a strain for us to take what we did live, go into a studio, and have an engineer and a producer and everybody, you can't have any echo, you can't, no EQ. You can't play that loud, you can't do it. You got to, and you have to do all these constraints, to get it recorded, because when we first started in 1969, when we first put out On Time and Grand Funk, we were going down to Cleveland recording. And, it was the very early days of rock bands, cutting loose in the studio. And they really didn't know how to do it that well. It changed later. That was one of the reasons we enlisted Todd Rundgren to help us, when we, after we got rid of Terry Knight, is that we needed to be comfortable in the studio and get with the times, And so it was very difficult to we were never satisfied with what we did in the studio, but when we did live, that was us. That's who we are, And when we put that live album out, that's what everybody understood at that particular time was, holy crap, check this band out. It was just like totally unrestrained, and it was all about feel and all about the moment, and great recording. It really was. It was a great recording.
Great recording. Now, and I'll just ask you this because I know about live albums sometimes, but was it a live album, or was it sort of comped together with a little bit of studio magic?
100% live.
There you go. That's what I want to hear.
There was nothing. We did we recorded 3 shows, and we took the best performances from those 3 shows. But there was no overdubs, nothing, no vocals, no guitar, no nothing. It was 100% the real deal.
And it's amazing that it is now in 2020, 50 years old. So, hey, right? It's 50 years old this year. It's unbelievable to think about that. And I'll just finish with this. What's Funk is, of course, the last studio album from 1983, which has been, I'm not even going to do the math because I can't think that fast, but talk to me about the importance of making new music, because obviously it hasn't hindered the band at all. And yet I talk to other musicians and they say, oh, I don't care about, touring and this. I need to be creative. I need to I have stories in my head that I've got to tell. How does that sort of balance out for you in terms of needing to be creative, but it's not really necessary to keep the band functioning as a touring entity?
Yeah, the whole thing is, now that we're into the download territory and now even take it a step further, streaming, it's just a whole different world out there. It's not like going into the studio and recording an album and putting it out, and you're going to, sell X number of units and make so much money and stuff. Everything basically is being given away these days. And we focus on live performances. That's our deal. And that's what we love doing. And, I think, from the creative end of it, we work in new stuff into the show. And over the past 20 years, we've had tons of new material come and go in the show. We'll do a certain show one year, that has these particular songs mixed in with our hits, and then the next year, that one song will pull out and we'll pull in another new song, so that's where we get the creativity. And I don't like to overdo new stuff in live performances. I just like to test it out, and see how it goes. And, we've got some great stuff. And and it's all roadworthy, it's like, it goes over well in a live situation. So, that's how I like to do live material.
Well, listen, it's working out. The band keeps touring and touring and touring. And hopefully, because the last live album was out in 2002, hopefully there will be sort of a 50th or 51st anniversary live celebration. Because as a fan, I would love to have Bruce Kulick on an official Grand Funk Railroad album. So I'm just throwing that out there. Another point for your next meeting. I'm going to chair your next meeting, I think.
Bruce must be paying you.
Yes, Bruce is paying me. No, and I'm going to chair that next meeting. So I have now officially bequeathed the name to him to go on for another 20 years. And I've oh yeah. But anyway, the Some Kind of Wonderful tour does kick off on February 8th and goes all the way until, well, let me see here if I scroll down to October. There you go. A lot of dates. And hopefully...
Yeah, actually, but I think we've got a date. I'm looking at my calendar here. We got a date out in November so far, too. So, yeah, it's going to go the whole year.
Oh, that is terrific. And hopefully we will see you somewhere near Montreal, and I'll come out and check out the band again, because it's always a great time. The songs just resonate. And as we say here, merci. Thank you.
Great, Mitch. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. Cheers now.
This has been Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. For more exclusive content and interviews, subscribe on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, and many more. Follow Mitch on all the socials, especially Twitter, @MitchLaFon, and on Instagram, @Mitch_LaFon. Get your Mitch merch now at loudtracks.com/Mitch.